Now, Russia's president is urging its citizens to get fully vaccinated. The level of vaccination in this country is just well under 40%. Less than a third, in some cases, of the population is vaccinated, far below the global average. The experts are blaming poor messaging and a mistrust of the government. President Putin's approved a nationwide non-working week to slow the spread. Sputnik was funded by the Russian Direct Investment Fund. The head of the fund, the chief executive, is Kirill Dmitriev, who joins me now. Kirill, it is always good to speak to you. I'm sorry we're not in the same place at the same time, but I am at least in Russia, which allows me to say to you, look, everybody to a person says the reason why there is no or low vaccination is because of mistrust, distrust of the government. Is that true?
Well, first of all, Richard, I would like to say that we definitely have one of the best vaccines in the world. And Sputnik V is registered in 70 countries with a population of 4 billion people. More than 100 million people have been vaccinated with Sputnik, and it shows great safety and efficacy profile. But I think there are several reasons for vaccination rates in Russia that need to be increased. And this is Russia has really been successful in fighting COVID before, so many people became complacent. And I do agree that we need to inform people more and more about the successes of Sputnik, including the great safety and efficacy track record that is obvious from use of Sputnik in the world.
But I wonder what you do, though, Kirill. Bearing in mind, first of all, the president has now done the unvaccinated over 60s. Frankly, they're the vulnerables. They were the first ones in the rest of the world. Secondly, this idea of the carrot and the stick, at what point do you think the government uses the stick? And thirdly, what about the WHO and other countries recognizing Sputnik V?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, many regions are already including a sort of mandatory vaccination for certain categories of people, and I think this is the right move by the regions. But again, speaking about Sputnik, I think it's very important that everybody in the world talks about boosters and mix and match. And Sputnik was the first mix and match vaccine in the world. We were the first to recognize that boosters are needed, and specifically so because, as you know, mRNA vaccines decline in efficacy to less than 50% efficacy in 5 months. So Sputnik is very well accepted in the world as a standalone vaccine, also as a booster shot for other vaccines. And we believe that we need to work together. And we have started combo trials with other vaccines in Argentina and other places. So Sputnik is clearly one of the safest vaccines in the world. We don't have any cases of myocarditis that some other vaccines have. And WHO just announced that they are re-engaging again and renewing their review of Sputnik. So we expect the inspection very shortly in Russia, and we expect approval by WHO in the next couple of months.
But what I find interesting there is you sort of repeat the idea that we must work harder. But for goodness sake, at this stage, 18 months in, I mean, you had the first vaccine. When you say we must work harder to make the argument, what do you actually do to make it? It's been repeated a million times so far. The president himself has said we must do it. What more then do you do?
Well, Richard, first of all, it's very important to recognize some key facts. So in Argentina that use Sputnik, you saw a major decline in cases 35 times in the last 4 months. So we know vaccine works very well. You also had major spikes in the US, in Israel, with a vaccination rates of over 70%. And those spikes are related to low efficacy of mRNA vaccines 5 months out. So we have a good fundamental thing, which is a great vaccine that we believe is one of the best. Its efficacy doesn't wane as quickly as mRNA vaccines. There's actually studies that shows adenoviral vaccines 8 months out show 10 times more antibodies than the mRNA vaccine. So to have people be vaccinated more, and we see vaccination rates increasing already. I think Delta really showed to people how dangerous COVID is, and we have no doubt that vaccination rates in Russia, will go to 60% of the population in the next couple of months. And I think we are on this way. And again, we need to fight this pandemic together. The great thing is that fundamentally we believe, one of the safest and most efficient vaccines in the world, and we need to use it more.
Right. Finally, I do need to just talk to you about the wider issues as a sovereign fund and as an investment fund. And this idea of the energy crisis and the investment environment in Russia, particularly, sir, when relations are, I mean, these aren't my words, or even the leaders have agreed, traditional relations between Russia, US, and Europe are low and not getting much better. How concerned are you?
Well, first of all, we really see Russia as a very, credible and very stable energy provider. And Russia has always been providing gas to Europe at a very stable prices in a very stable environment. And, one of the reasons there are spikes like this is that Europe rejected some of the long-term contracts with Russia, but Russia will continue to provide energy. Russia is continuing to invest in, regular energy projects as well as in green energy. And I think it's very important to have dialogue, and it's very important to have joint investments in different projects. For example, we invest in with Finnish Fortum in wind plants, in solar plants. So we just need to have much more cooperation with Europe, much more joint investments, and we believe it's possible. And we just need to be more, positive and really recognize that there is so much more to be gained by being realizing projects together in energy field as well.